obviously has had a lot of detail. We'll continue to follow him. But, yeah, he's waiting to see what he can expect in terms of a healing timetable, which really varies from patient to patient with injuries.
But to be clear, I mean, the notion that he wouldn't miss 3 weeks with this would be very optimistic, right?
Very optimistic. It's unlikely that it would be that soon. And it's important, I think, for people who are listening to understand that. Unlikely it would be that soon. But again, they don't know. They're trying to get a better sense of it, and these second opinions that come back should help with that.
So that leaves Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, and we'll see exactly how they decide to do it. Let me bring the guys in here and figure out what we can expect. Again, Neek and RC and David Pollack. And RC, I will just start with you, because this is a team that is somewhat near and dear to your heart, at least geographically. If this team has to play without Drew Brees for an extended period of time, they were unbeaten without him last year. Can they do that again?
Mm-hmm. I think they can. I think they can be really good, but also think that they can be really different. I mean, take it back to about 1997 in the Minnesota Vikings when Brad Johnson went out and Randall Cunningham became the starting quarterback. It changed the entire dynamic of that offense. They were explosive. They pushed the ball down the field. They got a little bit more exciting, and he didn't have some of these skilled players like the Alvin Kamara in the backfield. Obviously, he had the weapons on the outside. I'm expecting Jameis Winston to have to learn a little bit of the old with the new. If you're Sean Payton, you want a little bit of the old Jameis Winston. You want a guy that can push it down the seam to Jared Cook, get it outside to Emmanuel Sanders and to Michael Thomas. But you also want him to understand if you don't have that right away, if you don't have the matchup, you have guys like Alvin Kamara that you can check the ball down to. I believe that the Saints can be very good offensively through these weeks without Drew Brees. I believe they can be unpredictable. I believe they can be explosive. So you can't count the Saints out and just think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to move in and take over the NFC South when you have an experienced quarterback like Jameis Winston with a great coach like Sean Payton.
I get it. I want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying. In that circumstance, that was Brad Johnson, and Randall Cunningham basically took over the job. This is Drew Brees we're talking about. So I want to make sure that I'm not hearing you say that if Jameis Winston plays really well, that might wind up being his team going into the playoffs, even if Brees is healthy. That would be completely out of the question, right?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is this offense can be that type of explosive now with a different quarterback with a different skill set.
I get it, but clearly it would then revert, right, Neek? I'm looking at the look on your face.
Yeah, I mean, if they become explosive, it's going to be hard to go back with Drew Brees, because one thing they are not under the current Drew Brees iteration is explosive. So I think that they don't need very much from Jameis. What they got from Teddy Bridgewater last year was about average quarterback play, which was good enough with that defense that they had. Now that their defense is starting to play a lot better than it has in the early parts of the season, I think that Jameis doesn't have to do very much. But under Sean Payton, I think maybe Jameis can achieve some higher level of learning and will allow him to execute in a way that we're not used to, because we know he had 3 coordinators and 3 coaches down in Tampa Bay in that situation, and it didn't work out for him, despite the fact that he was really great in moments and really bad. Figure out how to eliminate the bad is going to be the hard part, and that's the task for Sean Payton, because he's not like Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater is a lot more careful with the ball than Jameis. Frankly, just about everybody is a lot more careful with the ball than Jameis.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater is a lot more like Drew Brees. There was a real similarity there, and so it made sense that would work, that you would just, one guy would step in and take over. David, this is obviously entirely different. You're bringing in a guy who, at least the body of his work to this point, has been the opposite of Drew Brees and Teddy Bridgewater. How good do you expect them to be with Jameis at quarterback, David?
First of all, I got a kick out of the way you introduced it. You were just like, hey, fractured ribs, collapsed lungs, maybe 3 weeks we'll see him again. I mean, that's just crazy talk that we're talking like that. But, you know, listen, when you look at this offense last year, 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater, look who they play the next 4 weeks. You're going to get the Falcons twice. You're going to get the Broncos. Obviously, those are going to be wins. You've seen them play this season. So the Eagles, we've seen them. That's a win. And then they play the Chiefs. And they were going to lose that with Drew Brees regardless. So I think this offense is more about Sean Payton, the weapons. But what Neek said, I am very interested to see, because right now it's dink and dunk galore with Drew Brees. He doesn't throw the football down the field. Jameis maybe stretches it. Maybe Sean Payton has a little bit more fun and does some different things. And just, you got to wait for that that turnover bug with Jameis Winston, because it comes. It's kind of just a matter of when.
If the coach is having fun with Jameis Winston throwing the ball down the field, he'd be the first one who's had that experience. I want to come back to this a little later in the show on what this could mean for Jameis, who was the first pick in the draft and has a real chance to resurrect his career. We will come back to that. But next order of business today is an entirely different quarterback situation. And there is none worse than this one, I guess, the Bears. They've lost 4 straight behind bad quarterback play from Nick Foles, who was carted off the field at the end of Monday night's loss to the Vikings. Yesterday, head coach Matt Nagy addressed the state of his injured quarterback room.
In regards to both guys right now, with Mitch and him, they're both a little banged up. So that's the number one thing that we have to look at. And then what we'll do, in complete honesty, is we'll take this bye week here again, and we will self-scout ourselves, and we will see the wheres and the whys. And whatever we need to do, we will do on a lot of different areas. So I can't say one way or the other on anything other than we will when you lose 4 games in a row, it's all on the table. Everything's out there.
The bottom line of it is this. The Bears are the second worst team in essentially every offensive category. Hembo sent me these numbers. We could have put a list of like 9 categories on this screen in which they are the second worst offense in the NFL. Only the Jets are worst in all of those. Again, the Jets are winless and the Bears are 500, so their defense has carried them to this point. But let's start by talking about the quarterbacks, because Foles is not the only one who's hurt.
Right. Mitchell Trubisky's been out with a shoulder injury. Obviously, he was benched anyway, so maybe people haven't noticed, but he is hurt as well. They have the bye this week, as you mentioned. When they come back in week 12, the story will be who's going to play quarterback. And listening to Matt Nagy there, it seems like he doesn't know yet. And it could depend on the health. If one of them's healthy and the other is not, the decision becomes easy. But if they're both healthy, then the Bears have to assess what's their best option going forward into this final part of the season. When they moved off of Trubisky for Foles earlier this year, it seemed like they wanted to make that a permanent move. But obviously they expected Foles to perform better and the offense to perform better under Foles than it has. So they have a difficult decision to make.
Clearly, but generally speaking, if both are available, is there a reason to believe that a decision has already been made by Nagy that Foles keeps in?
No, I think he's serious about the self-scouting. Teams really do a lot of introspection during bye weeks. I mean, I don't know what Trubisky's shown in practice in the meantime that would make them want to go back to him. Maybe it's something, but I would think they'll lean toward Foles. That's the guy he picked, right? You could have had you could have had Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, Phillip Rivers. All these guys were out there. They wanted Nick Foles because that's the guy Nagy thought could run the offense. So I would think he'd get one more shot, but they don't know.
Again, this is still a crew in here that is right in the middle of a playoff chase in the NFC. So, Dominique, I'm thinking about the team that you joined when you first came into the NFL. That was a Ravens team that just a few years before had won a Super Bowl with an offense that at one stretch went 4 weeks without scoring a touchdown. But that defense, led by Ray Lewis, was just that good. What was that mindset of that group?
Yeah, I mean, Ray was still there. They had a lot of great players still there, and they still had the same mindset where you don't point the finger at the offense. And I think it's human nature to look up when somebody's not doing their job or unit's not doing their job to say they have to do better. But in our locker room, and Chuck Pagano, who's the defensive coordinator, was a part of that team too. What we talked about was finding ways to score on defense. And I think Chuck's going to bring that same type of spirit to this defense now. It's like we pitch the ball when you got interceptions or fumbles because we need to score. It wasn't about putting pressure on the offense to do better. It was like we need to do more. And that works sometimes, but I think it's important from a psychological mindset to keep a team from fracturing, to focus on what you can do and what you can do better in the defense. They certainly, with guys like Khalil Mack, can certainly find ways to make more plays and try to set up the offense to put them in a better situation than they are currently putting them in.
So, RC, they shouldn't be pointing fingers, but we can. That's our job. So as you look at the situation, how much of this, the total struggles, I mean, watching them play offense, it hurts your eyes. How much of that is on the coaches and how much of that is on the quarterbacks?
I mean, I think it's on everybody. Listen, Matt Nagy and men like Matt Nagy are the reasons that divorce exists. Because we pick wrong sometimes. And he picked wrong. He fell in love with Nick Foles. He felt like that was going to be his dude going forward. And they weren't a match. And so now he has to sit through this bye week. And if I'm Mitchell Trubisky, you know what I'm on the sidelines doing that practice? I'm acting like Booby Miles chasing Gary Gaines down the sideline. If you won't win, put Booby in. Let Booby spin. Because right now, Mitchell Trubisky has a leg to stand on. Nick Foles is not doing it. They've actually regressed to me offensively. So if you're Matt Nagy, understand you made a a mistake. Understand the first mistake was you decided that you didn't want to change your offense to fit the skills and the needs of a quarterback that was drafted number 2 overall. Make the decision, go back to Mitchell Trubisky, try to save your team, your locker room, and your job.
I have sort of looked at it that way as well. And David, obviously, you cover the college game for us so closely and so regularly. What did you expect from Trubisky when he came into the league, and what are you watching in this Bears situation right now?
Well, first of all, I'm just so glad RC's on here for this analogy because he's going to get it completely. He's been a fan of a team year after year where the defense brings it, and you're just always like, wait, give me something on the offensive side of the football. LSU, time and time again for 25 years, just wasting defense after defense. If I'm a Bears fan now, I'm like, good Lord, man. What do I do? Like, we play great and